Okay, we are live, Ken, after that phenomenal hockey game between the Winnipeg Jets and the Toronto Maple Leafs. Toronto gutting it out, getting a win in just an absolutely phenomenal game where I feel like we're starting to see a pattern, or definitely there's a pattern between those first two games. One of the patterns, the Toronto Maple Leafs are really, really, really good. They can generate offense. They can push like no team I don't think that the Winnipeg Jets have seen before this year. I think I mean that 7-1 win by the Montreal Canadiens is something. And when Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl get going, that push is strong. But the consistent push that we saw from the Toronto Maple Leafs in those two games is something. Another pattern, the Winnipeg Jets know how to survive. They know how to keep themselves in games. We've seen it all year. And the last one, I don't know, Ken, if you know this, but Connor Hellebuyck is really, really good at keeping pucks out of the net. Let's start off and get some takeaways. But first, I just want to say I see the viewers starting to pile in here.
Awesome.
Love having you on here. If you have questions or comments, just leave them wherever you're watching. Write it into the comment board. We're able to bring it right into the show here and address your questions. Ken, give me your 3 takeaways from that game.
Yeah, elite level goaltending. Connor Hellebuyck was absolutely outstanding once again for the Winnipeg Jets. I mean, a variety of highlight reel saves. I honestly think his best save of the night was probably the paddle down stop on William Nylander. I mean, just a ridiculous turnaround pass by Austin Matthews to get it to the left skate of Nylander, and somehow Hellebuyck reaches out casually with the stick and it hits the paddle, and he just kind of batted it out of the air like it was a mosquito in the summertime. That was such an impressive showing once again by Hellebuyck, right locked into that Vezina caliber zone.
Just zero panic. Oh, hey, you said it, so I'm gonna let you get back to your other points here. But I was thinking this today, and we've talked about it on some of our various platforms here. I've said this before. I think Hellebuyck's shown up and he's flashed the Vezina form, but I don't think he's been at Vezina form or in the Vezina conversation this year. Do you think that there's a possibility of him fighting his way back into the Vezina conversation?
I really do. I think he's been absolutely locked in during these last couple of games for sure, Sean. And like I said, it wasn't casual, but the way he made that save, it was just like, no big deal. Don't worry, I've got this, knocking it out of the air. The other part too, I mean, another impressive showing by Nikolai Ehlers offensively, 2 brilliant goals. Awesome setup for Paul Stastny for the redirection to tie it late in the game. But the thing that impressed both of us the most, Sean, Nikolai Ehlers not really caring about the goals after the game. He was disappointed to be on the ice for all 3 goals in regulation time. So for me, that shows growth. I mean, Paul Maurice spoke about it minutes ago, about the growth and how much he cares. And again, I don't think that it was Ehlers' fault necessarily, and I actually saw a lot of great examples of back pressure from Ehlers himself, but such a strange game to try to put together. I mean, we talked so much, Sean, about the importance of that Dubois line with Kyle Connor and Ehlers
before the game,
finding their offensive form, and it was easily the most offense that line has generated as a group. A couple really strong plays to the net for that trio. Dubois especially, one off the mask of Freddie Anderson. But they also got caught a little bit, I mean, with some defensive zone lapses. And also Kyle Connor getting knocked off the puck is sort of what that started the play for Mikheyev. That whole sequence of events. Engvall wins the puck battle down low in the corner. Alex Kerfoot gets the puck and then kind of got Dylan DeMello spun around, and just not great coverage by the Jets there. So there were some issues for sure with that group defensively, but they did generate a lot. So, I mean, I think Paul Maurice will go back to the drawing board and say there were a lot of good things for the group, but they also had some things that they'd want to clean up. And thirdly, I think, again, another impressive game for Neil Pionk, but I think as a whole, the Jets were really under siege, not only just Hellebuyck, but they really had trouble with we knew the push was coming from the Leafs, and they saw it full force, and they were so dogged on the puck, it created a lot of defensive zone issues, and I see a lot of the comments from folks are about the defensive zone play and how much that needs to improve. Hey, absolutely 100% right, but the Leafs do certain things offensively that not a lot of other teams in the league do, and they definitely expose the Jets at times in their own zone.
I mean, I was going to say this, expose them at times, but I mean, time and time again, 3 breakaways, however many 2-on-1s. I think it was Mike Johnson in the first intermission on the TSN broadcast. It said, in the first period, he admired the Leafs bend but don't break. Sorry, not the Leafs, the Jets bend but don't break attitude. And after the game, Paul Maurice talked about that was the period that he liked. And that's the way they're being described in that first period as bend but don't break. I mean, I think it's just playing with fire over and over again. We can talk about that line and the defensive zone breakdowns, but if you're going to play that much of your game in the defensive zone, it's going to happen sooner or later. I guess let's first off, let's just get to some of our viewer comments here because we don't want those to sit too long. Dino Apostolopoulos, we're happy you're back. Dino is actually talking with us behind the scenes about our audio issues, and he's back and he's paying attention. He says we've got your mic in a better spot. That's great to know. Oak Tree asks, can the Jets improve at all in getting out of their own zone? I mean, this to me is the question, Ken, because the question going into the game to Paul Maurice was, what tells you that this group is going to be better defensively in game 2 of this little 3-game set than they were in game 1? And I don't think they were. I think they were worse. So is this something that's fixable, or is this just what you have to live with if you're the Winnipeg Jets as you're currently constructed?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair question. I do think that the Jets have the personnel to clean those things up. Again, we talked about it before. The desperation level was going to be high from the Leafs. They hadn't lost 3 games in a row under Sheldon Keefe since he took over as head coach from Mike Babcock. So we knew they would be pushing. We knew they would be coming. Of course, the Jets have to clean up the breakaway element. I mean, that was just not acceptable. And they weren't good enough defensively. And that, Paul Maurice was the first to admit it. I mean, given the number of chances surrendered by the Jets to the Leafs in this game, it was probably a just result. We always play the game after games like this. Was it a point gained or a point earned? I mean, yeah, that's 100% point gained for the Jets because they scored another goal with the extra attacker. But sure, you could make the argument that it's a point lost because they couldn't hold the lead. But this was one of those examples where it just seemed like it was a matter of time before the Leafs were able to A, generate a tying goal, and B, take the lead because they were, coming in droves, if you will. And here, the other part of it too, Sean. Let's not kid ourselves. The Jets were 5-0 in overtime. As good as they have been, eventually a team, especially a team with that is as skilled as the Leafs, are going to have a pushback and, score a goal. I mean, the Jets had their opportunity, just didn't convert it earlier in the overtime. So, I mean, again, I think that's my long-winded way of saying I do think that the Jets can improve, but there's never going to be, or at least I'm not expecting there to be a game when the Jets surrender 20 shots on goal to the Leafs and there's only 5 high danger chances. That's not the way that either club is constructed. But further to your theme on the Zooms, Sean, this is one of those games where the things that the Jets will need to do in order to compete with the Leafs, if they happen to see them down the road, are on display. High-end finishing ability, skating ability, and then you have that element of goaltender that plants a seed. Man, until William Nylander finished off that brilliant individual effort from John Tavares, yeah, he was in Mitch Marner's position of going to bed with nightmares based on all the opportunities he had during that game.
There's a joke in there, going to bed with a nightmare. I don't know, but I wanted to. Okay, this is an interesting way. Sorry, yeah. Sorry, let's get to. Wanted to get to the one about the first line. Yep, yeah, sure. Anchor's question was, how was the first line, and then we'll get to that other stuff after that. What was your take on the first line? Actually, here, let me go. I'll go first. I mean, I think it's been a tough slog for them in these 2 games, but I do think that what you saw from that first line, and we've talked about this, what has made the Jets so successful this season is that they're able to push at the right times, and that's what we saw tonight. They get kind of run out of the rink in the second and the third period, but when it was time to go produce, I thought that top line of the Jets, led by Blake Wheeler, I thought had a real strong push the shift before they end up scoring the game game-tying goal to kind of set the tone of how that game was going to end, how players were going to come off the bench. And then after that, they end up being, I know it's Nick Ehlers who sets it up, but that's the line that's out for that tying goal. So I take that as being they own this. I mean, there's a point on the board for the Winnipeg Jets against a very tough Toronto Maple Leaf team, a point earned, a point stolen, however you want to take it, because of that first line in my mind. But to address how they've gone against the high-end players of the Maple Leafs, I think the high-end players of the Maple Leafs have been better, but it's been the Jets' depth that has kept them in this series and has them with 3 out of a possible 4 points.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. In terms of offensive creation, I don't think that Mark Scheifele's line has been up for the challenge. They're playing hard. It just Matthews and Marner are generating more in those head-to-head matchups. I mean, the other part of that, Adam Lowry did get that assignment for a chunk of the game, and they did a good job on it. But I mean, man, for the Leafs, Zach Hyman has really been shining to me. I mean, and I've heard this from people that have been watching the Leafs a lot. He's just been great. I mean, they bumped Sheldon Keefe bumped him up in that Joe Thornton spot, and he was just fantastic. So again, I think that you also have to realize the Jets' top line has delivered in a lot of games for them this year. And again, ultimately, they help get the point. But I do agree that I don't think that was their best effort by any stretch of the imagination. Let's see what Saturday brings.
Okay, let's get back to some of our other questions here. Luke Armbruster, who's with us in our Instagram pre-games, is watching us right now on YouTube. I'm going to use this opportunity right now. If you're watching us on any of your other mediums, if you're watching on Facebook or Twitter, go check out our YouTube page. This is where a lot of our live stuff lives, and smash that subscriber button. We've got, and we should say, we're less than 12 hours less than 12 hours away from our Live with Kenny and Rennie Friday show, which is going to have Chris Stewart and Elliot Friedman on it tomorrow, who are going to be able to ask questions about possible trade bait for the Winnipeg Jets. And you are not going to want to miss that. But get to that YouTube page and subscribe. If you need, go into my Twitter timeline. I've got a connection to it if you need to find it. But let's get to Luke Armbruster's question, who is asking us questions on Instagram before the show, here for the post-game show. Thanks for joining us, Luke. Jets need to start playing to their strengths. The main goal of the defense should be to get the puck to their forwards, so ultimately we spend less time defending. Do you pin that on the defense here tonight, Ken, or is this a whole kind of team breakdown?
Yeah, I really don't. I understand where Luke is coming from, and that's always going to be the goal. But to me, it wasn't the fact that the defense were coughing up the puck or not able to get it to the forward grouping. For me, it was just a relentless attack from the Leafs forwards. I thought that they were excellent in terms of getting on the puck, in terms of being, dogged in their pursuit of the puck. And I just think that I was speaking with someone earlier this week, and the Leafs do such an incredible job of spreading out the defense in the defensive zone, and their ability to move the puck and get to those, get to those difficult areas and those high danger areas is just impressive to watch. Yes, I do agree there have been some defensive breakdowns, and I mean, yes, of course, the Jets want to get the puck out and exit a little bit more cleanly and get it into their skilled players' hands quicker. I wouldn't pin this on the defense at all. I actually thought that Logan Stanley stepped into the lineup and was very steady. I mean, I thought it was one of those games where you don't notice him a whole lot, which means that he's not making mistakes. So again, that's an area that they need to get better at. But I can tell you right now, Sean and Luke, the Leafs have made a lot of teams look very poor in the defensive zone this year, and the Jets were no different tonight. I mean, they were under siege at a lot of times, and there's going to be stretches where any team is going to have to try to weather the proverbial storm when you're playing the Leafs because of their high-end offensive talent.
I just want to point out here, Kenny, Winnipeg Sports Talk. I don't know if that's Hustler on the other side of that, or Michael Remus, or who it could be. But you were on their show today. Excellent to see them tuning in here and giving us we want to thank you for the shout out you gave for us on your show today. People will notice there's a lot of people trying to fill the void that was left behind by TSN 1290. We're trying to do that. Hustler and Remus doing an absolutely phenomenal job of that on a consistent basis, 5 days a week. And we'd love to for what it's worth, give them a shout out. I don't know that they necessarily need it, but go check them out because they're doing great work and keeping the sports conversation alive in this market. And we respect the hell out of those guys for doing that. Jets Riders 66, who I believe also may tune into our pre-games, I'm not sure, but asks, could Harkins become a Hyman type player? Now, if he does, holy smokes, because Hyman has really opened my eyes in this series. I know we've heard a lot of stuff about him. It's not the first time I've heard of the player before, but watching him the last 2 games, he's a guy who makes an impact every single shift he goes out there. And what I thought was a guy who would make an impact just by being that buzzsaw type player is bringing a skill set to that role that you don't see a lot of players have in this league.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I actually would counter by saying I think that Mason Appleton is more likely to grow into a Hyman type of player, a guy who you play on the third line generally, but you can bump him up in the lineup because of his speed, because of his ability to get to the net, like that net drive we saw the other night for the 4th goal for the Jets. I do think that Harkins has some of those similar qualities as well. But even too, I would even say Harkins was known as more of a prolific junior scorer. So I mean, for me, I just think that again, that Appleton being a Michigan State guy probably won't like the comparison to a Michigan guy like Hyman, but I do see similar qualities in those 2 players. But I also do believe that Harkins has a lot of that same tenacity, and because he can skate and because he has some of that goal scoring ability and playmaking ability, I do think that he can eventually jump up into a similar role as that as well.
All right, Kenny, let's start tearing through some of these because we got a lot of people joining and we want to get to them. Joanne, who I noticed follows us quite a bit on Twitter, and we're so happy to have you. What are your thoughts on Logan Stanley coming back from being on the taxi squad? You touched on this a little bit earlier, but let her know your thoughts quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought that Logan Stanley was steady on that third pairing. I didn't see him make a lot of errors. I thought he moved the puck pretty well. Again, he hadn't played in almost an entire month, so I do think that would have been a bit of a challenge. But I think Logan Stanley is super encouraged by how the season has gone for him. I probably wasn't, even though he's always hoping to be playing that much, but to have played 13 games in a row earlier. I think what's important for Logan Stanley is now with Nathan Beaulieu out for probably somewhere in that neighborhood of 4 to 5 weeks, based on what we heard from Paul Maurice. I think it'll give him an opportunity to really start to settle in on that third pairing here for the Jets. And again, I said that I really think that Dylan DeMello is a solid partner for him. Again, even though I would like to see Dylan DeMello used with Josh Morrissey. I know someone asked about that a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't have a good answer. I don't see a drop off from last year necessarily. I do think that because he started off the year but missing the first 4 games, I do think that might have hurt him a little bit early on. But I think that Dylan DeMello is in a position where he can handle some additional minutes, and I do still think there's an opportunity that those 2 could be tried together. And if not, another thing that, Sean, that struck me during the game today, I wouldn't mind seeing, we saw it a little bit the other night because the Jets were down to 5D, I wouldn't mind seeing Pionk and Morrissey get a few shifts together. I think it was a bit of a tough go. We talked earlier on the pregame show. I think Derek Forbert has been excellent for the Jets for the most part, but there were a couple moments there where it was a bit not smooth for him. Kind of lost coverage on Marner on the rebound goal on the first goal, and had a couple issues during the course of the game. But again, this is going to happen to any player. But I've been banging this drum for quite some time. I do think that DeMello still has the ability and capability to be used on a top pairing with Josh Morrissey. And I do think we will see it eventually. I don't know when, but I do think we will see it eventually.
Jets Rider 66. I know I've interacted with you quite a bit on Twitter. Ken's right. He's been banging that drum for a long time. If you come check out these lives that we're going to be doing more and more, you'll hear it. Believe me, you will. Terry 155 says, out-muscled, out-hustled, but great to get the point. Hate the Leafs, but man, oh man, what OT goal. I'm just talking about that. I tweeted after that, what sorcery is this? Like watching that, like watching it live, it was like, what did he just do? His hands moved so fast, and the way that he was able to bring that inside and put that straight up as quick as he did was absolutely phenomenal. I mean, even in slow motion, it was impressive, but live, that was one of those things. It was like he was playing a shell game with his hands and the puck. You just could not follow it. Blake at the Lake, who we have on our Instagrams, I believe, our pregame Instagrams. Do you guys think Hellebuyck will get the start on Saturday evening? Ken?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think that he's in the zone right now. He wants to keep playing, and after, as you mentioned, with the Jets taking 3 of 4 so far, I mean, you could call it 3 of 5 available points if you want to say it's an overtime point. But for me, that's still a traditional 3 of 4. They have an opportunity to win this series outright. They're still in that position where they're knocking at the door of being in the conversation to being able to push for first place. I do think we'll see Laurent Brossoit soon enough, and probably in one of those games against Montreal, but I absolutely expect to see Connor Hellebuyck between the pipes on Saturday night.
Where am I going here? Okay, I want to talk about this one. Brent Palachuk says, Jets have been terrible for giving up high danger chances for 3 years. It's time for a change. We've heard that sentiment before. I think, fans get frustrated with these games that their wins, they don't, or points like they were tonight, wins like it was last game. I guess I'm going to ask you the question this way, Ken, because if I came up to you and I said, you goalied a team 2 times in a row, you're going to walk away from that, how you're going to feel. I ask you this, did the Jets have they earned any confidence in these last 2 games? Because I'm going to give you my answer, just a short answer. I entirely think they have. But at the same time, it seems strange to say that about a team that clearly escaped with the points they have because their goaltender was superhuman on both nights.
Yeah, I mean, I think that most teams, the formula to beat the Leafs are going to outchance most teams in the National Hockey League on most nights. Do you feel confident in the structure that the Jets were able to play, defensive structure? No, I mean, I don't think that would be a template that the Jets will be throwing around in their pre-scout meetings, Sean, if they would happen to go into a playoff series with them. They're never going to say, let's do our best to get outchanced by a whopping variety. Having said that, you're going to have to give up some chances, but you need to be better at the high danger chances allowed, especially the breakaways. What we had talked about earlier is that, yes, the Jets are still giving up some high danger chances, but they've limited the odd man rushes. They've limited those 2-on-1s and those 3-on-2s that were such a problem even in the year where they had a franchise record in points and finished second overall. They still were a little bit loose defensively, and that's at a time where they had a lot more higher end personnel on the back end, if you will. Do they need to get better? Or they need to cleaning that up? Of course. I mean, but do they need to make a change? I mean, that's debatable. I mean, I think that the Jets also have made some improvements in terms of their offensive game and the offense they generate. There wasn't a lot of it today, but they still were able to generate, and they have a lot of high-end scoring talent. So, I mean, it's always going to be a balancing act. There's some days when you think the Jets may not lose again, and there's other nights where they definitely ride their goaltender. But guess what? There's a lot of teams in the NHL that rely on a good goalie. Sean, back to your original question: should the Jets feel confident in terms of can they hang with the Leafs? Absolutely. I mean, do you expect to win a series like that?
Well, I think
it'd be hard to get to 4 if you get outplayed like that. But
I think that's why they have. That's why you earn confidence, is because they've showed that regardless of of the Leafs throwing everything they have at them, they can hang in these games and earn points.
Here's the other part of that. You know what the Leafs are saying? Those same Leafs that haven't been beyond round 1 since 2004. Can Freddie Anderson handle the job in the playoffs? Who would you rather have in the playoffs? Honestly, going into the series, would you rather have Connor Hellebuyck? I'll give all of our listeners or viewers, you can have the field. I'll take Hellebuyck. You can have any of the other goaltenders. But having said that.
Okay, here, stop right there. I'm going to ask you this question because it popped up, and I'd like to. So I do think that in the last in the playoff series that we've seen, Connor Hellebuyck has not necessarily been at his best in the series that the Winnipeg Jets have been eliminated. It's a very I think, a very strong possibility that they have to go through the Toronto Maple Leafs to get there. I see to this series so far, and the way Connor Hellebuyck has played his best hockey of the year in this showdown between two potential 1 and 2 teams, I see it as a very good sign of him bringing that game to a series in the playoffs. Do you agree?
Oh, absolutely. And even just listen to Connor Hellebuyck's messaging in the Zoom calls. I stole a lot of goals. I mean, he doesn't care that he gave up 4. It was all of the saves that he was able to make. So I do think this is one thing we know from being around Connor Hellebuyck. He hates to lose, and he does hear all of the people who happen to be saying that when you're looking at Marc-Andre Fleury, Jordan Binnington, and even last year, Cam Talbot, he hears people say that he got outplayed by those goaltenders.
Right.
And that doesn't sit well with Connor Hellebuyck. Ultimately, it's up to him to show it, but he definitely has the ability to win and steal a series if he has to. And again, that's my biggest takeaway from these first 2 games against the Leafs. Is that their template for success? No. But you're going to need your goaltender to step up at a level that Connor Hellebuyck is playing at if any team thinks they have a chance to beat the Toronto Maple Leafs.
I want to explore this. Pomo should have rewarded Ehlers, Connor, and maybe PLD and OT. Wheeler had a rough game. The interesting part about this is I had the same thought, but I know the answer to why. I had the same thought, though. They had played so well offensively and looked so good, I'd wondered why not go out with them. But the answer essentially is Paul Maurice has said it time and time again that overtime is all about winning the faceoff and getting possession. And there's probably not anyone on the Jets that's as trusted right now in the faceoff dot in a situation like that other than Paul Stastny.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, and Paul Maurice leaned on that again. He was asked specifically who he goes with, and the night that the Ehlers line or the Stastny scored the goal, I mean, that was part of the deal. He won the first faceoff against Montreal when he tapped in that Nikolai Ehlers shot. So the other counter to that would also be, Sean, what Nikolai Ehlers told us, rewarding them, well, sure, for their offensive play, but they were also on for 3 goals against. So
right.
What are you rewarding? I mean, again, you want them to build their confidence. And again, we totally understand that it was, at some points it was a rough go for that top line, but the top line also helped produce the tying goal. Of course, it was set up by Nikolai Ehlers, who was the extra attacker, but I mean, it's not a surprise that the coach would go with the hot hand, considering the hot hand scored a goal with, late in regulation.
Both of these games seemed like we were hanging on for dear life. Toronto put our defensive weaknesses to the forefront. Agree or disagree?
No, I mean, we've already been talking about that for sure. I mean, it was definitely a factor. I mean, like we said, the Jets were not good enough defensively. They know that. They've said that. So I definitely think that it's a fair point. But again, we're getting close to the midway point, and there's a lot of hockey to be played. And we knew that going into this stretch of games, the games with Montreal, the games with Toronto, we were going to learn a lot about the Winnipeg Jets. The fact that they've been able to now get points in all but one of those games. I mean, I think they would be pretty happy with that overall. That's the thing. I mean, you're one game away from a crisis. I mean, so what happens here, Sean? So if the Jets bury that chance at the other end before Austin Matthews goes roof daddy on the backhand,
right?
And the Leafs have suddenly lost 4 games in a row, is it a crisis for them based on the way they've been playing? No, but some people would feel that way. So I think it's very difficult to have perspective in the division this year because there's so many swings. I mean, 1 week the team in 6th thinks they're a 3-game winning streak away from being in it, and then the next moment the team that's in 2nd place all of a sudden is wondering if they're going to be able to hang on to a playoff spot. I mean, I think there's a lot more rides on the roller coaster to come for not only the Jets fan base, but for the 6 fan bases that believe they're still in the playoff race here.
I want to return to something you were talking about before about how you would take, and clearly you would take Connor Hellebuyck again ahead of Freddie Anderson. It's a question, and you'd referenced it earlier, but that question that I asked to Blake Wheeler about the idea, and I get why he doesn't want to necessarily answer it, but The idea of, if you're the Toronto Maple Leafs and you walk away from these two games, and here we're talking about building confidence and maybe should the Jets have confidence? Well, if you're the Toronto Maple Leafs, how confident can you feel that you felt like you dominated wide swaths of those two games and walk away from those two games thinking you barely held on and you're actually down points wise in the series? The way I put it to Blake Wheeler was, can you get in a team's head doing what you're doing, coming back in games, having your goaltender goalie another team for two games in a row? To that point, do you think the Winnipeg Jets may be getting in the Toronto Maple Leafs' head with the performance that we've seen?
Yeah, first and foremost, Sean, that was Blake Wheeler's 2018 version of "Pump the Brakes" for you.
Yeah, I know.
For that question.
Sometimes you got to force them to pump the brakes, right? We get to be the gas pedal, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. But no, I mean, I think that there would be, again, if you're Sheldon Keefe and the coaching staff, you're continually pumping positive vibes in with the Leafs, saying, man, it's only a matter of time. You keep getting chances like that, you're going to score and eventually get what you want. And eventually they were rewarded. So I don't think that, I mean, again, and none of those players would ever admit it, but we talked so much about body language this year. If you look at some of the body language that William Nylander had displayed in going to the bench after numerous and countless scoring opportunities, one wrapping off the bar, you can just tell. We saw the other night, Andrew Kopp and Josh Morrissey just with such incredible relief when they scored. You saw the same thing from Nylander, and you saw... I think the classic part of the Nylander goal, he was raising his arm before the puck even hit the back of the net. It was one of those things where he knew he was so due and overdue to score that he knew it was coming, and then just it feels like a big weight gets lifted. So, I mean, this has just been fun hockey. I mean, this is just so much fun to watch two teams like that get together. And again, we understand the frustration that a lot of the Jets are feeling. The Leafs are feeling the same thing. And I mean, they've been knocking on the door here for quite some time and have not been able to get by Boston, Tampa, even Columbus. So I think it's two teams with a lot to prove, and there's no guarantee those teams will even meet in the playoffs. And here's the beauty. There's 7 more of these to come. So, I mean, if we're going to find out if the Jets can hang with the Leafs. You know why? Because they play 7 more times.
Yes. Yeah.
So, again, you need to, if you're the Jets, you need to win, more than 500. You have to go better than 500 in those 7 games, or else you don't have any chance probably to catch them. But I still think that the Leafs, are going to probably finish first in the division. And then where it goes for the seedings and which teams nail down those final couple spots is going to just be absolutely awesome to watch.
Sean Gange or Gagne, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Sorry if I'm butchering that. 2 of those were definitely butchering it, or I'm 0 for 3. But he does point out an important point. I keep looking at this as a 3-game series that we're going into right now, but can't forget that first win that the Toronto Maple Leafs had over the Winnipeg Jets. So actually, when it comes to the season series, they've earned more points than the Winnipeg Jets have. Sandy, who joins us just about everywhere, I love this line, an OT lost better than a slap in the belly with a wet fish. As an old friend used to tell me. I want to get back to this, and I gotta say this, Kenny, I love it, the people who hop on here and refer to you as aces. I'm almost thinking we need to rename our shows to the Ace and Sean show or something like that, because I'm loving it. But Ace, what's it going to take to improve KFC's D-zone coverage and exits? That's coming from Poppin ATL.
Yeah, I mean, we know that Kyle Connor is a brilliant finisher. I think that, his board work, I've seen some signs of improvement there for sure at various points this season. Again, is Kyle Connor ever going to be a Selke Trophy candidate? I don't think so, but I don't think it was from a lack of effort. And again, someone suggested to me it might have been a casual play down low. I just think that Engvall I think he either caught Kyle Connor by surprise, but he just went out and out-muscled him down low, and I think that's somewhere where, Kyle Connor needed to be a little bit stronger on the stick prior to that Leafs third goal. It's definitely something that he works on. He knows it's something that again, he became a very good penalty killer before he got taken off the penalty kill. So I do think that he values the defensive side and the defensive element. It's not like he just wants to be a one-trick pony and be a goal scorer. So I do think that is something he needs to work on and will continue to work on. But we say this a lot, Sean. I mean, a lot of the higher end talented scorers are not as good defensively. That's at all levels of hockey. I mean, we talked about this about Patrick Kane. I mean, you're never going to confuse Patrick Kane with being a really great defensive player, but he can do things with the puck that no one else can. So
it's a balance. Yeah.
There's always going to be, you're going to have to give, there's always going to be some give and take. But again, I don't think it's from being lackadaisical or not wanting to get better at it. And I said this all the time about Patrick Laine as well. It's not that he didn't want to get better or wasn't trying to get better, but for a long time when Patrick Laine played in Finland, that left defenseman wasn't bearing down on him at the hash marks or forcing turnover on those cross ice plays. So again, I think it's a matter of time, and I think he'll continue to work at it for sure.
Okay, well, I'm going to bring Sandy back into the show here because she asked about 81, 13, and 27. I think what you're talking about and what you have up front and what you give up on the back end, the hope is that PierreLuc Dubois is able to cover off that back end and allow a guy like Kyle Connor to focus more on offense and maybe hide or erase some of the defensive struggles there. Are we seeing that it's not quite there yet, or right now have we only figured out how that line can either be all in one way, but then it costs them on the back end?
Yeah, I mean, I think that ultimately I would be encouraged if I were Paul Maurice in terms of what that line was able to generate, but I do think there were a couple issues with the sort outs and who was taking whom on the back checks. And again, Tavares made such an incredible play that it on a replay and in slow motion, it looks like, oh, why didn't Dubois go to Nylander? But it looked as though Forbort had the play handled, and then the next thing you know, he had zipped around with a play to the outside wide guys. So I think these guys are figuring out how they click together. And again, part of that is defensive hockey. I mean, that's you got to figure out where guys are going to go until it becomes second nature. I do think that we saw a lot more creativity from that line together in the offensive zone, but I think we talked about the connected nature. I think that's still a work in progress, but what we've heard a lot in those Zoom calls is that Ehlers and Connor really enjoy playing together, and I think that PierreLuc Dubois is starting to get a little bit more comfortable down the middle with those guys, and I expect he'll continue to improve in that area again.
All right, let's find this coming from Anchor, because I was just on a podcast yesterday with Mark Shegg, who does a great job of covering the Columbus Blue Jackets. He tweeted out tonight that the Jets had 2 scouts in the building, and Anchor asking if we're trading for Savard. He probably saw that same information that likely originated with Mark Shegg. I mean, I see this as the Jets are going to be doing their due diligence on every guy. They're probably getting out there and having a look. I'm sure you're going to see their scouts at some point at the Nashville Predators games as well. But Ken, do you see that as a more likely deal to be made, even though you wrote a great story about the big guy that they'd sure love to get out of Nashville?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Ekholm is probably the number one target for any contender that's looking to add on the back end right now. There's no doubt about that. As you mentioned, the due diligence element. David Savard is also going to be a more than capable addition to some hockey teams. Is it a surprise? I mean, we've also mentioned him as a possibility for the Winnipeg Jets for obvious reasons. He's a big, strong guy. He's a good mobile puck mover. Back to the original questions about will the Jets get better at exits? Would the Jets be better and have more clean exits if they had a guy like David Savard helping the back end? Yes, of course. He's an experienced guy. He has played in the playoffs before. We know he's very close with PierreLuc Dubois, as we've mentioned, with Dubois living with the Savard family for one season. But this is always that time of year where the scout boards get overblown for me. It's always important to mention who's there. But the fact that there happened to be 2 people in the building on one night, I would say that a lot of times we overdo it with that information and try to connect the dots a little bit too crisply. That's not to say that they're not doing their due diligence. And the other thing that I would say, Sean, and you and I have talked about this a lot, both on and off the air, the Jets know what Matthias Ekholm is. They've played against him in the same division for many years in playoff series. They would already have a viewing or two of him this year. They wouldn't have seen David Savard as often. So I don't think it's a surprise that you would be having a closer look or having two scouts in the building. And that's the other part. The scouting world has changed so much this year with COVID and the pandemic that there will be plenty of viewings, whether it be in-person viewings, online viewings, or any of those things. So those guys are going to attract attention from anybody who's on the market and looking for a defenseman. But would David Savard be a good fit for the Jets? Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, these teams got to do their due diligence, right? If you're not doing your due diligence, you're not doing your job. The Jets have to be prepared for any scenario, including not making a move, right? But sure. If they're going to pursue the market, maybe the right deal never comes along. Maybe the price is always too high and they think it's too damaging down the road. But the one thing the Winnipeg Jets are going to do, and to your point about sometimes this gets a little bit blown out of proportion, they got to do their due diligence. So they're going to be in the buildings, they're going to be checking everyone available, and they're going to be making sure that if they do decide to go in a certain direction, they've got a portfolio built up on each player so they can take it to their boss and say, this is why we would get this guy, this is what he would give, and we did our job so you can keep paying us going forward. I love this comment by Jets Rider 66. Last time I checked, a goalie is part of a team just like a high-end center or winger. I mean, if you think of it from that perspective, I mean, there's a lot of teams that have really skilled players who score your way out of the games. Jets seeming to be one of those teams. But do you subscribe to this, that, hey, this is the Winnipeg Jets, we play a certain way, and maybe that means that we give up 3 breakaways in an evening and a number of 2-on-1s, and we've got Connor Hellebuck and he's going to stop them. So take that, right?
Well, hey, let's not kid ourselves here. The Jets knew going into the year that elite level goaltending is a necessity for them. It's, we've said this for a long time, like for all of the 10 seasons, average to mediocre goaltending will not get the job done for the Winnipeg Jets. And that is still the case. Sometimes even good goaltending sometimes is not enough. But when you have that club in your bag, to use a golf analogy, and the club in the bag is elite level goaltending so far from both the starting goaltender and the backup, Laurent Brossoit, that's something that every team wants to have that. And let's be honest, every team needs solid goaltending to get into the playoffs and to win in the playoffs.
No way we can hang with the Leafs in a playoff series. Somehow we have to slow them down. I mean, we talked about that, but I mean, I think this is the point here. They need to find a way to slow that team down. That's got to be the focus for Saturday night.
How about you, Peter? What did the Columbus Blue Jackets do to Toronto last year? Toronto was a high-scoring team last year too. So again, they haven't proven that they can win in the playoffs. I do think they're taking amazing strides, and this could definitely be the year for the Leafs, but I don't think that anyone can anoint the Leafs until they actually show they can do it when the chips are down. I mean, that's not a knock on them. That is a fact. And it's not just the Leafs. There are a lot of teams that haven't been able to get the job done when it matters most. And even some teams that have gone on runs, they still get upset at certain times. So do the Jets need to play better in order to hang with the Leafs? 100%. But to dismiss them outright, I don't. I'm with Blake Wheeler on this one, Sean. I don't think the Leafs would go into their room after that and say, you know what, we don't have to worry about the Jets anymore. I don't think that's the case at all. I think if we're being completely honest, the Jets have been the stiffest test to the throne that the Leafs have faced this year. And I mean, they're going to face, here's the other problem. If you're the Leafs, this is every night for you. When you have established yourself as at the top of the pecking order, every team's gunning for the Leafs. There's no break for them.
I think we're going to use this as an opportunity to get out of here. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. If you're watching right now, if you liked what you saw, go to our YouTube page. You're going to be able to find it either on the Facebook, or you should be able to find it on either Ken's or my Twitter account. Click subscribe and make sure you tune in tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. We've got our weekly podcast, the Live with Kenny and Rennie show. And again, we're going to have Chris Stewart from Hockey Night in Canada and the big man, Elliot Friedman. I know a lot of you are asking about potential for trade. Well, no one better to ask about that than Elliot Friedman. You can interact with us during that show as well, like you did here tonight. Just want to once again tell you all how appreciative we are. And the last thing before we go, Winnipeg Sports Talk Show, the Illegal Curve guys, they are our brothers in this thing. Support your local podcasters. They're working hard to make sure you get the coverage that you want and that you need in this market when it comes to sports in the absence of an all sports radio show. We really appreciate you tuning in. Check those guys out. Keep checking us out. We'll see you tomorrow morning, hopefully.